Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Big Three podcast. First episode, really excited to start this. Start with some introductions. My name is Gavin. I'm joined by Alki and Kostas. We're going to be hosting. So I figured we'd start with some personal introductions. So I'm Gavin, obviously, from Phoenix, Arizona. As far as a Greek standpoint, I support Olympiacos. I also follow Phoenix Rising in the USL for anybody who's American and might be familiar. But yeah, start with you guys, Alki.
Yeah, I'm Alki. I'm in Northern California, right outside the Bay Area. For Greek teams, I support Panathinaikos, and I do also follow Dortmund pretty heavily, and then try to follow, a little bit of all the other leagues myself. Kosta?
Hi guys, my name is Kostas. I come from Athens originally, and I'm currently studying in London. I'm a bachelor year. I support, from a Greek standpoint, AEK Athens pretty heavily, and more as a secondary team in the British Premier League, Arsenal. And I generally follow most European leagues. That's all from my side.
So I guess we'll get right into it then. So obviously, it's been a big week, a big couple weeks for Greek football in Europe. Not really from a good point of view. So I guess we could kind of start chronologically with Champions League. Olympiacos played on Tuesday. Obviously, 2-1 loss in France to Marseille eliminates us from contention for the round of 16. So this week we have Porto at home, and we're kind of battling it out with Marseille to get that Europa League spot. I don't know if either you guys got to catch the game or if you guys had any thoughts from the performance or anything like that. I could probably share my thoughts at the end, being an Olympiacos fan.
I was able to catch the game. I did watch it from start to finish. Looking at my notes, it wasn't necessarily a bad game. I know a lot of people's sentiments and thoughts are pretty neutral in the sense that the officiating just as a whole was questionable, to put it politely. VAR did come in the clutch for the French side. I have my own personal thoughts on VAR, but I won't get into that too much. And just kind of overall disappointing because Olympiacos, I don't recall, played bad. Marseille was kind of struggling just to even stay in the game. I wouldn't say Olympiacos created too many crazy chances, but they were commanding that game pretty well until those bad calls. I mean, Marseille, their two star players in Talvin and Payet just couldn't get into. You could tell they just lacked motivation until they got a couple calls going their way, and they showed up. It's pretty disappointing to say the least, though. Costa, I'll let you kind of chime in.
Yeah, I caught part of the game as well. Unfortunately, after I caught the Olympiacos goal and everything after that, basically. Great finish by Camara as well. Great finish. It was kind of a game. It could have really gone either way. I felt that after Olympiacos got the first goal, they were really in control of the game. They weren't really dominating, but they were not going to let it slip through their hands. Eventually, it did because of, as you guys said, questionable decisions. But I felt like they were always more or less in control. And for an away game performance, I don't feel like they did bad at all. And of course, the bright aspect of this is they still have the direct comparison against Marseille. They have the win there. So all they have to do is match Marseille's performance against Man City, against Porto. Should be manageable, but of course, it will be a difficult performance at home.
Yeah, for sure. For me, so obviously from the perspective of an Olympiacos fan, it's incredibly frustrating, especially if we want to talk about, the calls and whatever. I have my opinions on that personally. The first one I think was questionable. The second one, no way I think that's ever a penalty because he was standing outside the box. But yeah, I agree with what you guys said about it wasn't a bad performance, but the problem with us that I've kind of noticed is this season we're sometimes struggling to put these games away, especially like that. When you get the away goal in the first half. We went into halftime, up 1-0. We were in control, but I wouldn't say we were necessarily dominating. That's where I think the game management has to be a little better from Martins and just, the team in general. So obviously frustrating performance, but it's not over yet. Really, we're the only Greek team with any chance of being alive in January. So obviously it's kind of a big deal that we get a result against Porto, which will obviously be a tough game, but got to hope that, City can get the job done at home against Marseille and it won't matter.
Hey, Gav, do you have any stats on that game? How many subs did Martins make? I'm just kind of blanking
I don't know off the top
out
of my head. I
here.
can look here real quick.
Yeah, while you're looking up, because I guess my only other thought with him is with the squad issues you guys had, especially against City.
Yeah.
Barely putting a team out, and you guys still only came away with a 1-0 loss, which is huge. I told you personally off the line that, given the circumstances, that's still a good result, especially there were a few chances where you guys almost caught them, especially with Fortunis. But
yeah,
I'm curious how many subs he made, because given squad issues and you guys finally had a healthy squad, I would have hoped or assumed he would have rotated a little bit more heavily, given that some guys had just come back and you guys were kind of in control of the game and getting fresh legs out there to just run Marseille out, because they weren't really making many changes themselves until the second half as well.
So he made 2 changes. He had five available. He makes 2 changes. He brought Masuras on for Mvila in the 79th. So I think that was after we had already gone down. Yeah. So we conceded the second penalty, 75th. And then Sudani in the 92nd minute. So yeah, I didn't remember that specifically off the top of my head, but now looking back, like, that's part of the game management. That's where, if you're chasing a game, we had options on the bench. We had a guy, I know people have been kind of knocking Vinagre. Obviously he's been disappointing, but like, throw him on as like, just extra pace on the flanks or whatever. You had Drager on the bench. We had Pepe. I mean, there was options we had that we could have put in the game. And again, that's just back to the point of we just this season haven't been able to really take control of those games at times. So obviously very disappointing. Hopefully, he learns that lesson against Porto so that we can hopefully get a result, especially even from a coefficient standpoint. I mean, it's been how many weeks since Greece has gotten any coefficient points? I was looking at the standings, and like Serbia's right behind us. They're like 0.2 points away from us. So
I think they officially solidified it with these past weeks' results in Greece with their, I think, somewhat succession compared to our just complete fallout. And kind of to segue off of, and then Kosta, we can get to maybe to Ike after this, even though they were next in line, we were really relying on PAOK to get a result in similar fashion, though, talking about how struggling to manage games and finish and take control. I mean, I watched that PAOK game, and till about the 50th minute, I was live tweeting on our page. They were just dominant. I mean, I posted the first half stats. They created like 10, 11 chances, and it was one of those, okay, you say, maybe they couldn't finish. After every 5, 6 chances, they finally put one away, an amazing goal that Zoli scored. That was just beautiful football. But then it was the same story second half, and they still kind of look a little shaky on the counter. It's just one of those things where they had possession, like it was 79-31 or 20, whatever it was, 21, and 20 chances created, I think, and duels won and everything. But a small team like Omonia, just those quick little moments, even though that had a very questionable officiating game too, they capitalized. And that's something I think the Greek teams, especially PAOK in that week with Olympiacos, they made chances, they dominated the game, and they just couldn't find a way to actually hold their composure and finish strong. It's something's missing for those teams to just get over the hump, over the hill, and really take it to that next level.
It's very reminiscent as well of the first game. I think it was the first round at Tuba against Omonia.
Yep, that was first game.
absolute same story. Omonia early goal. It was always obvious what strategy they were going to have when you go to Tuba. As a team like Omonia, you're going to defend. And I feel then it took even longer. I think not Zolis, and Morg scored. I think around the 75th minute, something like that.
Morg.
And of course, and they still didn't manage to break them down for a second goal. And same story, really. I mean, they just really have difficulties breaking down small teams, just like in the league.
I noticed. Speaking of PAOK and their dominance, I was watching the game in the second half. I didn't catch the first half because I was working. Watching in the second half, I saw them show the stat. I want to say this was around the 80th minute. It was like right before Omonia got the penalty. It was like, PAOK had like 19 shots on goal and Omonia had 7. But only 3 of PAOK's were on target and 5 of Omonia's were on target. So that's the that's what, again, it goes back to like just not being clinical enough. It's to the point where you get against that low block team and you're tempted to take those, long shots. I saw they were down and Varela tried to take a shot from like 30 yards out. I'm like, you're a center back. Like, what are you doing? It's just it's just, you get that. It's just not, it's careless. That was the thing. And that was the thing with the penalty. It was just careless. That's what it was. It was
super careless. I mean, I tweeted about that with El Kaddouri. Just at one moment, you could see they finally got some sense of urgency to try to go for the win. And just, you could see the frustration, but he had like a 5-minute span of just lost possession, then fouled the guy, and then committed the eventual game-winning penalty.
Yeah,
on the
I believe he got a yellow card in that stretch too. Like, it's just, and that's the thing is like, you see the same stuff with Olympiacos at times. Or really any Greek team. You were Shock Cup a couple weeks ago against Zorya. It's just losing your head in these critical moments, and that is what turns the game. And that's
it's inexcusable, I think, more for PAOK too, because personally, I think they have more talented attacking options than you guys, Gav. Kosta. You guys have maybe better, just like Fortunis, and even though he's out of form, El Arabi in general, but that's like 2 or 3 guys versus PAOK collectively have good options, and the numbers you see them. I mean, 19 chances created, even though some of them weren't even on target. I was watching the game, like from a very neutral standpoint, I thoroughly enjoyed PAOK the first half, but seeing it as a whole, it was just very disappointing because, as is the story with everything in Greek football, the finishing and the clinical finishing is just non-existent. But I mean, it is what it is. I mean, Kosta, I don't know if you have any other thoughts, if you kind of want to move over to the Ike game.
I was just going to add quickly. I was just going to add quickly to the PAOK game. I agree to the fact they have probably the best attacking combinations in the league, especially with the signings they've made, and Zivkovic, who's really hit the ground running. Even Morg has been very good. So, yeah, I feel like there's much more potential there. Unfortunately, I don't know if we'll get to see it this season. But, yeah, moving straight on to that, I'll let you guys talk about Ike first, and I guess I'll wrap it up.
So I actually didn't get to catch the Ike game because I was working. I did get to see some of the highlights, and again, it looks like again, one of those things where I think the scoreline might have been a little harsh. Not saying they should have won, but it, like with the Zorya game, like, you see the 3-0, you're like, wow, they must have been terrible. And I don't think in general they were, but again, it's finding the results and, the finishing, they just get outscored. Like, I know that sounds stupid and simple, but that's really what it is. Like, they don't play badly. They just, again, these other teams, I don't know if it's wanting it more. I don't know if it's, I guess, Braga are a pretty good attacking team themselves. It's just, I don't know. It is definitely frustrating to watch, even from a neutral standpoint of Greek football. It's just,
Well, I can say for the Braga game, I did watch that one. But we can start with the Zorya game, where that one was a pretty open game. Was, I think, 0-0 till what cost that, like the 50th or 60th minute, somewhere around there.
Around there, it was for a while.
Yeah, it was after Shaka. He got sent off like right after,
which was, I think, was terrible call. A little questionable, but again, that's the pattern with, seems last couple weeks with the Greek teams. But kind of speaking from even following Dortmund, we have the same issue of just slow possession. You can dominate the whole game, but there's been games where we just don't finish. We either tie or end up losing. And that's the same with the Greek teams. I mean, Marseille game, Zoria game. I won't say Braga because I think I'll get into that more tactical, but um, all these games, everyone dominates. We get chances, but just don't finish. And it's teams that are more resilient, like Olympiacos, for example, in the Man City game. Completely depleted roster. You're playing guys out of position. You're playing a team like Man City, Pep Guardiola. No matter what kind of form they're in, they're going to dominate. It's just natural. It's inevitable. You know that result. You're going to hope to maybe catch them on the counter or whatever. Um, but I'd say on the flip side, other than officiating, that game is one of those where you guys did show your resiliency, even though you guys lost. You were expecting, I would have probably said Man City's going to batter you guys 4-5-0.
I thought the same thing as well, especially with the squad.
And the one goal that they scored was really only due to one small mistake, but that small mistake is really the pattern with all these games. We've dominated all of them, possession, but not finishing, and then we end up getting beat because of just one small mistake. But that one small mistake cost you the game, and I think that's what happened in the Zoria game. I won't say as much for the Braga game. Kosta might have some different thoughts. I think tactically that was a pretty open back and forth game. Braga did have better counterattack in the final third, but I feel I played a little too narrow for a team that liked to play out wide like that. They were very congested in the middle. Granted, that's how a lot of Greek teams play. They play conservative and do like to control the midfield, but a team like Braga, who plays wide and on the counter, which is how they got beat for their goals. I'm surprised, honestly, the scoreline wasn't a little bit more for the Braga game. On both sides. I mean, I probably could have put a couple away, but I'm surprised Braga didn't. They were a couple link ups at the end and they just kind of fumbled it with a wide open goal. But the Zoria game was just, even that scoreline, was it 2-0, 3-0, 2-1? I can't remember.
It was 3-0.
3-0. It wasn't, that scoreline is kind of deceiving to how the actual game. I did play a man down. They did concede 3, but they didn't play bad per se. It was just those small mistakes in certain areas cost them. But that's my thoughts on the whole Ike thing. I'll let you kind of touch base, Costa.
Yeah, definitely. So basing now, I'm sure we'll talk maybe about Ike Panathinaikos later, but basing now solely on our European games, it's definitely been our defensive lapses that have cost us. I wouldn't say attacking, it's very hard for a coach to influence that in a certain sense. That really is up to the players, or to a certain degree, of course. But defensively, we've really been, in fact, it's declined ever since the coronavirus pandemic began. So before March, Carrera would always set up a very solid defense. I don't know if you guys remember Ajax Olympiacos in January, but that was one of those games where we defended, basically. We played for the draw, but it actually worked in that case, and it hasn't worked out lately. Talking about Braga now, they were simply qualitatively better in their attacks, and our defense just couldn't stop them. So Galeno, the left winger, absolutely had Bakakis for breakfast. Bakakis was open 3 of the 4 goals, I think. And it's just the defense is, at the moment, the main issue are our fullbacks. Insua is also not up to the task. Vasilidonopoulos is a decent option for now. But and just the center halves, Hnid, there's already bad blood there with him wanting to leave. And Sidotas also simply has to do better in the future. I don't know if he's a great replacement for Barkas, judging off his performances until now.
I think that's one of those things where it's like you guys have either lost a couple players, like you lost Barkas, or you have guys like, Bakaki. So I think it really declined recently. And I think I definitely see the defense thing, because that's where you get those kind of deceiving scorelines, like with Zoria, where it's like hard to say that they didn't deserve to score those goals. But at the same time, you would look at the broader performance of the game and say, well, Ike didn't play like a team that lost 3-0. So I think, that's one of those things where it's finding your replacements for those pieces. And I mean, Olympiacos is kind of the same way. in a different part of the pitch. Obviously, we've lost a lot of our attacking production, but it's I think it's like part of it is COVID. Like teams aren't able to really do that business that they would usually be able to do. Being cash strapped or with players not being available. It's just
Well, I think so. To touch base on what Ike defensively have dropped, Bakaki's shell of himself since that injury. It's a lot of people say age 29, that's your prime, especially as a defender. Defenders usually tend to age a little bit better, actually, especially with experience. You're smarter. But he's just a shell of himself. But yeah, they've got a lot of issues there as far as pandemic. I have my personal thoughts, just sport wide, it's going to be difficult. Yeah, people are cash strapped, but injuries are going to happen. The schedule's way too compact. Playing with Greece, the big three teams that are in it, PAOK, AEK, and Olympiacos, they are playing just like when I would follow Dortmund stuff. They're playing every 3-4 days. Yeah, these guys are professionals, they're athletes, but they're used to playing once a week, and then during certain stretches, they usually get a break from league play during Champions League. It's usually a little bit separated, or that's usually one of the few times that they are overlapped in the schedule, but it's been consistently, they didn't really get a full summer off. They're playing every 3 to 4 days, which is a ton on your body. You're going to start seeing more and more, if you haven't already, injuries, especially muscular pull, stuff like that. As an example, for the Dortmund squad, I mean, the last 2-3 weeks we've lost 2 to 3 key players just to muscle pulls in training, and then in games they're just getting beat up. Guys are playing 70-80 minutes. This kind of goes back to your thing, Gavin, and what we just talked about a few minutes ago of just game management. Coaches, I'm not a coach, so take it for granted, but I still see a pattern of coaches approaching these games in all leagues and all teams of not doing heavy rotating. That could be due to, obviously cash strapping. You don't have as many eligible guys or competent players as much as the big boys, but at the end of the day, you still have to look out for your team's best interest, and health should be number one. And just game management, 2 out of 5 subs available, and you're still not making one until like the 75th, 80th minute in a pretty important game that's going to really determine Europe. Had they beat Marseille, they'd probably be in a better, more comfortable position with this last game against Porto. They wouldn't be under pressure to have to win and perform.
They'd be in a chance to, if they did win, they could be going on to the round of 16. Like that's just, well, actually no, because Porto drew. Never mind. But yeah.
Well, but you get what I'm saying is just
for sure.
Taking the lead, and this is pretty pertinent to the Greek teams, but I see it everywhere, is just game management is just pretty lacking for some of these Greek teams and teams in general, playing that much in a compact schedule. It's just, I'm not happy with it. I don't know why they scheduled the way they did. I get it. It's a pandemic. A lot of teams in the league and UEFA as a whole lost a lot of money, TV viewership, but I don't know. I guess we're in that day and age still where money makes the world go round. So whether guys are injured or not performing or whatever, as long as they're put on TV, that's what's going to happen, and that's what they need. And I get it, but make use of what you can.
Where I think some of these coaches haven't really adjusted to this new climate yet, because I feel like for example, in the Marseille game, I think what happened there was Martins was trying to put out the best squad that he had the most confidence in. And he has a couple guys on the bench that he can throw in that he trusts. But I mean, like, at a certain point, you got to take chances with guys, whether it's, for us, like Vinagre or Dreger, or some, like, I know he doesn't like to play them because they haven't gotten in as much, but I'm like, well, that's part of why, like, you don't integrate these players. And I think it's just one of those things where at times the coaches are approaching these games like it's a normal game in a normal environment without a pandemic and without, everything that's happened this year, and sets us up for failure most of the time.
Yeah, I feel like also it's weird that we aren't seeing more, I think, academy players being played, because I think Olympiacos has probably easily the second or third, depends on Panathinaikos, but behind PAOK, one of the best academies in the country.
Yeah.
And
Well,
you
all the
aren't
four
seeing
top
them
four,
anymore.
they do have it, and
Yeah.
it's
AEK is a bit behind in that regard.
You're
But,
not seeing it, but to kind of segue into league play, I think while there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of stuff obviously going on with a lot of teams, but especially Panathinaikos being the history they have and stuff and how far they've fallen off, it's kind of refreshing to see. I'm still 50-50 the new manager. I don't know if you guys have seen the last two games, especially today's Athens game. He is playing a lot of the youth, the Greek youth. He's making use of seeing what works, what doesn't. But he's playing guys and he's getting results. I mean, they're on pretty decent form. I don't want to say good, but they've been scoring goals. They got a result today. I think their last league game, I checked, VR saved them from getting a couple of extra goals on top. But they're playing well. They're meshing a little bit better with the foreign. There's some kind of good run there, but the term is that they're using these young Greek guys, which is refreshing to see, because I think that kind of goes hand in hand with game management. But it could be, they're in a situation where they're not competing for Europe. They've got a new manager. They've gone through crazy turnover. It's a mess, to put it politely, to say the least. But maybe it's because they don't really have as much to lose as, per se, let's say Olympiacos and AEK and PAOK keeping top of the table and taking those chances, taking those risks. They're not as prone to it.
I agree that might be an aspect of that, and I understand, wanting to field the team. I get the starting lineup you put out made perfect sense, and I have no problem with them starting those guys. But there is a certain point where I'm like, you got to take risks at some point, and that's one of the things that kind of bothers me at times about our coach Martins, is that he doesn't like to take those risks unless he absolutely has to. Especially when it comes to starting young guys, the only reason guys like Tsolakis got a kick or start in the game is because we had no one else. So I mean, I think there comes a certain point where I would like to see, even if it's someone like Androutsos or a couple of these guys we have on loan, just throw them in there and see what happens. Especially if you're down, you're gonna lose, you might as well. And yeah, I agree with what you said about Panathinaikos. They looked very good today, and I think a big part of that is that they looked more motivated, and that motivation comes from this being a derby. You're playing guys that understand what, the significance of that type of game. They know what it's like to fight for that shirt, and that's what they went out and did. So, I mean, I think that is something that is very encouraging, and hopefully, we see more of that. And I hope, as an Olympiacos fan, I hope we give more of our youth more of a chance, not just when they, get to, a Tsimikas level or a Retsos level. I would like to see us take more chances in that regard.
I was especially impressed by Vasilis Zagaritis, the left back today. I think he had an excellent performance. Alexandropoulos as well, to a certain extent, but I was really impressed by Zagaritis. Panathinaikos need to do all they can. Sorry?
He had the assist on the second goal, right, Zagaritis?
Yeah, I believe, yeah. And Panathinaikos need to do all they can do to really keep him on the contract, because you really want to avoid another Vagianidis situation. That was a big loss for them, at least we think. We don't know how he will develop, but they need to do all they can do to keep him.
Yeah, Alexandropoulos, he did okay today. He had a really good game last game that they played, and I don't know if you guys heard that. There's some guys driving around outside. But he did have a good game, decent game today, but he had a really good game last game. But yeah, like I said, he's playing. I'm looking at the stats now. I mean, it's good to see Kourbelis is back. He's back from injury full time. He scored, which is pretty reassuring to see for defensive mid, considering he was one of the few that couldn't put away a good chance in the Ethniki's last game. But so Kourbelis had a good game. It's good to see the captain back, but like I mentioned, I think Panathinaikos is kind of on a good run. It's good to see. Kind of talk about the rest of the league too, a little bit, considering. Well, Panathinaikos, I can kind of start if you guys don't mind. We'll continue that. How in the derby was pretty good game against Olympiacos, I'd say. Chances missed on both ends. Obviously, they lost, but back to the whole organization club is kind of in a mess right now. I mean, we talked earlier offline before we started, guys, that Gavin Giovanni had a great game. He had an assist, which is kind of refreshing to see, considering after that derby game with Olympiacos, there was kind of some fuss and arguing with the coach. And I know usually, I mean, in history, it's okay to be vocal with your coach. You're always going to have disagreements. A lot of players don't kind of show it for respect of, their sanity and the club and their reputation. But there was some definite disagreement between him and the coach in that derby. I saw when he got pulled off and he wasn't happy. But I think it's just natural. He wasn't in form for a bit. He was in pretty good form before the break, and he got called up, thankfully due to injury and COVID for other players. But he did all right for Ethniki, and then came back, and that happened. And then being on the score sheet, being involved today, not necessarily involved on the score sheet, but had the assist, and being involved today was pretty nice to see. I'm a pretty big fan of his myself. His inconsistency, but I mean, that comes with experience, and it's pretty normal for most young players of ours, pretty inconsistent. But yeah, I'm just glad to see they're in form. They're playing their youngsters, and they've had a pretty good couple of weeks in the league. Hopefully I think they've jumped up to 5th now with the win today.
Yeah, I think they're 4 points behind Aris.
Yeah, so they're jumping up and they're doing well. So I as a fan, I'm happy to see that. It's kind of refreshing. I'm not going to hold my breath and think, hey, we're back, but just a step in some of the right direction, at least just from a playing standpoint, to be able to see them climbing up the table, being in, back towards the top is good.
Well, that's one of the things that I noticed from what I saw the game today, especially with the young players. I think that was an important piece for them. Obviously, like I kind of said it earlier, they were playing hard. They were playing for the shirt. It was a derby. Obviously, when you have these young guys who've grown up, in Athens or in Greece in general, they know the significance of a game like that. And I think you could really see it today. How they were playing, the celebrations after they scored, like you could just tell, like they really wanted to go out and win that game, and they did. And I thought, I thought both teams brought great energy, but I think Panathinaikos just had a little bit extra today. But yeah, I thought overall, like it was an entertaining game from what I saw. It was very, end to end. Both sides were, going for it. So yeah, I think it was a good derby.
It was an interesting game for sure. I feel like from an Ike point of view, it may have been at least pretty close to one of our worst performances this year. I feel like in general, not just our offensive output, we were shaky defensively. Yeah. Again, we've already said this relating to Europe, but our fullbacks are a big issue. I'm expecting action there in January, hopefully. But also just overall bad performances by these kind of players. It was inconsistency today, and it just happens.
So speaking of inconsistency, I know you kind of wanted to touch about this, Kosta, and we'll kind of let you, before we let Gav kind of finish off with Olympiacos. We'll touch the other games too, of course, because the Falcon one today was also pretty interesting. I've got some thoughts on that, but since we're on the topic of Ike and inconsistency and the results they're putting out, how they're not necessarily playing bad, but they're also not playing great, and playing decent here and there is okay, but when you're not doing it consistently, it gets down do you think some change needs to come? Or I know you said you have some thoughts on Carrera, where
Yeah.
that direction is going.
Personally, I always liked Carrera as a manager. I felt like he did a very good job in the early year. So, February, March, up to then we won several derbies, Panathinaikos at home, Aris at home, Aris away, actually, sorry. But then at home in the cup. But after that, it just really fizzled out. I think the loss of Ranius was very important in the defense. He has his character is questionable, but otherwise he was a rock at the back. I feel like we just don't have a player who will really make the difference. And I think now that Levi Garcia has come back from injury, I feel like he can really make a big difference. So I'm hoping this kicks on, but I'm not very optimistic considering today's performance. And it may have been the last straw for Carrera, although I can definitely see him staying still a few weeks.
Yeah, I
So
think it's big that.
go ahead,
Sorry, I saw Ike today. They got Mondalos has been out recently. They got him back, and then also Garcia. That was a big loss for them, especially going into Europe. Because I remember watching the qualifying games, and I thought, early on in the season, he was one of their best players. So hopefully they'll get some sort of momentum with those guys and make some, good business in the winter window.
Yeah.
The only thing I was gonna say was, yeah, they do lack that one guy, and I don't know. I'm not much involved in the Ike community per se as a fan, as much as maybe you. But what's the consensus on Montelos? Because I feel like it's kind of hit and miss with him. It's they like him, they don't. He gives it his all, he doesn't. I know he's been rumored to be leaving the last few windows last year or so. They did just get him back, but he's kind of, I feel like he plays that same role in the Ethniki where he's got the talent. He could be that guy, that leader, or has the opportunity to kind of push and take control of a game, to push it over the edge, but it just doesn't happen. And his character, kind of talking like he talked about the defender earlier. What is the consensus about Montos? Because for me as an outsider fan, you see guys like him because he is Greek as well. You'd expect that that's somebody you could rely on, and he would be that guy. But it seems like Ike is lacking that since the restart.
Yeah. I feel like Madalos has probably been one of our brightest spots though, since like he's been the most consistent, I would say, within our team. But he can't do everything alone, obviously. I feel like Mandalos used to be criticized a lot by the community very heavily back in 2018 and 19 when he was still recovering from his injury.
Mm-hmm.
Ever since the summer of 19, I feel he's really kicked on. So he's really improved since then. Is the most important player for AEK right now. Probably, yeah. He basically runs the team. And I hope he'll improve further, but even just as he is right now, I feel like if we can put the right combination of players around him, he can perform. Within the Ethniki, I think that just the main issue is he hasn't performed there, but he's also being played out of position on the left wing.
Yeah.
And that's just something that doesn't suit him at all. We've seen, like, he put up some terrible performances there. And no point in denying that. But I'd be
I mean, you
curious
guys
to
have
see.
Kareem too. I mean, he's the last few games I've seen, the last couple weeks since the break and right before the break, he's been a pretty good. His timing is pretty good and on some runs. He was unlucky in that Braga game, got caught offsides. That was really close, but he's been coming up clutch for you
Yeah.
guys, at least just being involved during the game.
Yeah, I would
which
say
is good.
I'd say he's easily our best striker right now. Oliveira isn't really swimming up to it mentally and on the pitch, and it just shows at this point. Yeah, I'd say Karim is definitely also one of our strongest players right now in attack.
And then you guys recently got, which is good news, I think, for Ethniki too. Galanopoulos, he had a pretty big layoff, right? He came back in his first game and scored, I think, a week or two ago. But I didn't check the details on that. Like I said, it kind of checked in and out.
Yeah, he scored versus Larissa. A pretty nice goal, long range shot, and I hope he's back for good.
Okay. Gav, any thoughts on the game other than what we've talked about? We want to move over to maybe some of the other games before we talk about the Falk game, because that's a pretty good one to have a lot on that game. That's kind of that was an interesting game.
I mean, I think we've definitely it covered everything that all the thoughts I had on the Ike game, and like Pau game. It was a good game in my just from a neutral perspective watching. I spots for both sides. It's finding consistency, and it's also, I think, part of the problem is having players available. They had Garcia out for a while, they had Mandalos out, they had Gallinopoulos out, and guys like Oliveira, and I would even say the Valle just struggling. So just to wrap that up, I think it's just a consistency thing and just finding a consistent group of guys who are fit and available and performing.
Yeah, agreed here.
Well, Kosta, do you want to kind of go over some of the games from last week before we touch the league games from this week? Because I know me and you, talked about that Volos game. That was a pretty interesting game we all talked about. I don't know, Gav, if you got to watch the highlights from there and catch up on that game. It was.
I know. I saw the score. It looked like it was a crazy game. I don't remember if I got to watch the highlights or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Volos played. Who'd they play again? What was it?
Poland, Spain.
Poland. That's right. I'll let you start that one, Kosta, since you did watch and me and you kind of touched base on it during the week. But
yeah. Well, Apollon. So first of all, they've surprised me in general with their attacking play in that game. It's not something you expect from a team that is coached by Yorgos Paraschos, but they did very well. We're 3-0 up shortly after the half. And at this, they were completely dominating Volos up until the 60th minute. It wasn't even really a tale of two halves. They were really dominant over the course of the game. And just defensive lapses in the last 20 minutes really cost them. And you could just see Volos really building up that confidence as time went on. But overall, observed over the whole course of the game, Apollon should have been 4-0, could have been 4-0, 5-0 up by the 60th minute. It was a really dominant performance. And it's very unlucky for them, but I guess it's good to see, considering the coach they have. He's known for his very defensive play. It was surprising to see a change in that.
Yeah, for sure. I know we talked about Ioannidis also was huge in that game. Doesn't show up on the score sheet whether he scored or assisted, but he was heavily involved in just if you watch the game. Instead of just checking the numbers and the stats, the eye test, he definitely would have been probably one of the main guys that made everything happen. Which, I mean, I know that's pretty normal, but for them, but just seeing how big of an impact he had in a game like that, like you said, it's kind of refreshing to see that team play attacking football.
He's very new to the Super League stage in general. I believe he came from Doxa Dramas a year ago, and hasn't played in the Super League, I think, at all prior to this season. So he's definitely started well into the season. Long may it continue.
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, I didn't get to watch that game super closely, but just to talk about both of those teams, I know you said, Kostas, that you were kind of surprised by Apollon. I am too, like in a good way, but I would also say the same thing about Volos. They're two teams that are kind of, obviously on the smaller side of things as far as clubs go in the league, but they're having pretty good seasons. Both of them are, kind of around mid-table in that conversation. Yep. They've both gotten some good results. Obviously today, Apollon went to Crete and got a win over Ofi. I got to see some of that game, and I thought they looked pretty good, especially on the counterattack. But yeah, it's interesting to see even, and also with Bolos yesterday, obviously they lost to Olympiacos, but they looked a lot better than I would say the scoreline would probably dictate.
I would say if we transition to the Apollon Ofi game from this week, which I partly watched, this was back to the Apollon you would expect from a coach like Paraschos.
Yes.
So Ofi absolutely dominated this game. Should have honestly won it, just from chances created, shots, all that. But Apollon got a very early goal from a set piece from Fation. And from then on, I mean, it was great counter-attacking play, which we know they can do. And Ofi just couldn't break them down eventually. But they were very unlucky not to score when the score was 1-0. They could have easily caught up. But I guess you rue your missed chances. And Apollon quickly built up the 2-0 lead. I think shortly after the half it was, or towards the end.
Yeah, I want to say it was around like 60th minute or something.
Yeah.
It was from Dauda. It was actually a really nice goal.
Yeah,
on the counter.
Yeah, it was definitely a beautiful goal. We actually got lucky this week, seeing some pretty nice goals all around the league.
Oh yeah.
To be honest, I mean, we can talk about that a little bit after, because I think the goal of the week, I would put it to Zolis today. But let's cover that Olympiacos game on the flip side, Gav, since we're talking about Volos and Apollon. You guys,
yeah,
took a good game there.
It ended well. It did not start very well. Obviously, we had Gregor go down with an injury. It was like second minute or something, where he kind of just pulled up on a dribble. So hopefully that's not, too major, because I don't really want to be relying on a 35-year-old Rafinha to be playing twice a week.
Yeah.
The penalty we gave away around 20th minute was kind of stupid. It was just Ba with a defensive lapse. Obviously Bolos scored, but after that, we were always, I think, in control, even though I would say Bolos were playing very well for the circumstances. We were, in control. We were creating more of the chances. Masuras got the goal back before halftime, and after that, it was just the constant pressure. And I think it's good that, El Arabi got, on the score sheet and got a hat trick. So hopefully that will boost his confidence up before, Porto this week, because
God knows you need him.
Oh yeah, and I've been really disappointed by him this year. I don't know what it is. It just seems like his timing for everything's off. He gets caught offside. I would say like 4 or 5 times a game. I'm like, it's frustrating to see.
Yeah, I know you and I have talked about it, but way before. I'd say even back to last Champions League season. He's definitely, I wouldn't say fox in the box. He's not necessarily a poacher. He's kind of a poacher, but he likes to play on the back end of the defender. His timing is literally sometimes it's just terrible, but I'd say like 80% of the time it's pretty close. He's just got a natural feel and hunger for the goal, but he's, since I think Champions League last year, I mean, you talked offline a long time ago about it, I felt, man, you guys feed him and he just kills certain attacks, man, just by literally being a foot off or just being way off and just not being aware. Get it, he's older, but in a sense, I would expect that more from a young and experienced player. For a guy of his age who's been in the league for enough time and has the experience, guys, usually attackers with age, get better in the sense of field IQ and where you're at. So no, and I mean, I see that.
I can definitely tell, like, he's still got a lot of that technique. You could even see it, yesterday with the Bolos game. Obviously, it was against Bolos, but they were decent finishes, controlling the ball in the area and just getting the shot off. And I can see it at times, even in Champions League, with his hold up. So, I mean, hopefully, maybe it was just a confidence thing, and he's coming back from COVID. Hopefully, pray to God he's going to do better this week.
Do your stuff, real dude.
Yeah, I mean, because it's just I have a feeling this game against Porto this week, obviously it's a very different opponent than last season, but it might be one of those things where, like, that's the game where we might just be knocking on the door for a while, and we'll need that just moment. So hopefully we can get that this week, and hopefully this is a good boost for him to get his form up a little bit.
Yeah, I thought it was also interesting. On the Volo side, I've been very impressed lately by, I don't know if you guys have heard of him probably, but Tasos Luvikas.
Oh, yeah. He had that shot. He hit the post.
Yeah,
he hit like the underside of the post. That was an amazing shot. He's a younger guy, isn't he? Isn't he like early 20s?
He's 21. He's 21, yeah.
Yeah, he's still young.
Won the penalty, I think. Yeah,
yep.
That was
he did.
Penalty.
Yeah.
Yep.
And also, it was also interesting. I think that's the first goal Olympiacos has conceded at the Karaiskaki.
It is.
Which is a phenomenal record into December, yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I noticed about Volos that's interesting. I think they have like a nice little squad there. I mean, obviously they have a guy like Luvikas. They have Warda. I saw something apparently him and Martins had like a little conversation after the game because his contract is up soon about Olympiacos maybe targeting him. Don't necessarily know how I feel about that per se, but he's a good player. They also have Ninis, obviously trying to salvage what's left of his career. So I mean, yeah, they have some nice pieces there, and I think you could definitely see that yesterday and different parts of the season where they've gotten some wins against some better teams. So there's a tough little side for sure.
Yeah, for sure. They're not an easy away trip either. I think remember Olympiacos had the
They drew them last
away.
Season. Yeah,
Ike drew away to them. I'm fairly sure. And it's just not an easy place to go.
I think they're like one of those teams that are probably maybe 1 to 2 players away, at least in the Greek league, from taking them to that next step to not, I don't say challenging, but at least cracking into like the top 5.
Well, yeah, and definitely like solidifying their spot in the league.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's their second year up, and they look really good right now. I mean, we've seen this before with Platania, so we're seeing it with Lamia, even to a certain extent, where they'll have like one good season, second season syndrome, and then go back down. So I mean, hopefully, just from their perspective, they can find that and try to be a more solid team. But I mean, I guess that remains to be seen.
Yeah, I hope so, because I think the one and only thing I'll say about them that I've noticed as a pattern in a lot of their recent games is their service is lacking. A lot of set pieces, and they rely, they play from the back on the flanks a lot. And their service are just on set piece. I see they just can't even sometimes pass the first defender. Their crosses are just low or short, and it's just one of those things. If you had some slightly better service, it doesn't even have to be great, just even a little bit better, considering the results they're getting with a mediocre squad to what they're working with. I can only imagine that they would be able to at least get a few more results and probably add some more points to really, like you said, solidify them. But hopefully, they keep up their current form and continue being that consistent. I think we've got a few other games, Kosta, you want to touch base on too.
Yeah, for sure. So since, you talked about Lamia being a one season wonder kind of, let's move on to Pas Lamia, or Pas Yanina against Lamia. 2-0 win for Pas. Very solid win overall. It wasn't the most exciting game, contrary to actually most Pas games this season. They've been a very exciting team to watch. They had a very strong high press. Lamia really couldn't get anything done. And by the way, another stat I picked up was that Lamia's last away win was in January of this year versus Spaniolo. Wow. So they haven't won away for 11 months now and are yet to win a single game this season. So it's looking very bleak for them. Yeah, they have a very uninspiring attack as well. I see them as top relegation candidates easily.
Yeah, it's between it's like them and Panathinaikos.
Yeah,
really struggling.
Yeah,
and I feel for the teams, but you watch them play, and it's like it looks like they just lack any kind of just motivation to put any product together for the field.
Well, and I think the problem is again, with the financial climate. Obviously, it's always going to be insecure for a lot of these lower teams in our league, but especially this season, I think it's almost to a point where you get this far, and obviously it's far from over, but you get to a point where it's like you're almost kind of defeated. You just what's going to happen every game.
I feel like their managerial choices aren't helping them either. They now have Babis Denes at the helm. He, I think, has had 5 different stints at the club. He's kind of known as always going between Lamia and Apollon Smyrnis. I think he's been 4 or 5 times at each club. But it's not looking good for them. But when it comes to Pas Yanina, I was maybe not impressed because we already knew what they were capable of, but it was a good, solid win. And another interesting stat I picked up actually is that they're very strong in the beginning of the game and they usually fall off in the end. So Pas, if only first half games in this season counted, would be on 24 points and that would put them first in the table.
Wow.
So, yeah, they have a fairly strong start. They would have beaten Olympiacos, for example, as well. It's just in general, they always fall off at the end. Here, they were showing signs of it as well. They were not as strong, but they got a quick goal at the end of the game. And I also want to give, well, not a shout out, but the player that impressed me was Christos Eleftheriades, the left winger for PAS. Was a great game today, always cut in, scored a great goal, and he's now, I think, on 4 goals this season. So he's one to watch as well.
Yeah.
That's good. That's
No,
really
it's good to see. It's good to see a club like them. Obviously, once we have fans back in the stadium, whenever that is, that's always another tough place to play. They've got a good fan base over there, a pretty historic club. So, after a year in the second league, it's good to see them back up, playing well, for sure.
Yeah. I believe next up we had Atromitos Aris, if you guys have picked that up.
Yeah.
That was a pretty exciting one as well.
That was a pretty fun watch. I mean, it's, I guess, a pattern we're seeing this weekend with teams from Thessaloniki getting a player sent off in the first half. So yeah. I would say it was a pretty questionable setting off for Rose for a handball. It really did not look intentional. Harsh. Yeah, that don't know why he got sent off for that. So you had Atromitos, they convert the penalty, and then in the second half, I believe it was second half, they scored a pretty nice goal. And it looked like they were in control at home, 2-0 up. But Aris, I think the past few seasons we've noticed, they've been very good on the wings, and that's where their 2 goals kind of came from. Was just like that overlapping wing play, was just that constant pressure, and they found the goals. So overall, again, I think that's been a kind of pattern this weekend with some of these games. Yeah. It was very good energy. It was fun to watch. Both teams are really going for it. 2-2 is probably fair result.
Yeah, it was a very cool game. And one player I was very impressed, or not necessarily this week, but impressed in general, has been Xan de Silva. He's only come off the bench as far as I know for Aris. He's a loanee from West Ham United. And he scored an amazing goal against Larissa last week. Again, today had an assist.
Yeah, that was for the first goal, I believe, right?
Yeah. No, the first goal was the penalty. The second...
Oh, I mean, yeah.
I believe.
Well,
yeah.
I thought...
No, sorry. I was thinking about him. No, it was the first goal.
Yeah.
It was the first goal.
Because I remember he got they got the turnover. He picked the ball up and really nice switch of the ball to that outside foot and across. So he was.
The second one was from the right, exactly. But I was also impressed by the Manuso's gesture after he scored that penalty goal. I believe it was something to do with his mother, or I think she recovered from a health issue, something like that.
Yeah, I saw the very emotional reaction. I didn't really know why it was, but you could tell, that meant a lot to him. So
yeah, you could tell that meant a lot to him. All right, and then I guess we still have Pauk left. Your performance. So Alki, I guess, report for us.
Yeah, well, I caught the game a little later, but I know you caught the part that I missed, and then when you switched over to the other game, I caught the rest of it, and I don't know what it is with El Kaddouri, man. I mean, talked about it in the last Europe, and he just continued this game just completely careless on all 3 situations. I get it, you don't get the call, but I don't know, getting in a guy's face or coming up to headbutt,
it was just stupid. There was
way too soon. No reason. It wasn't at a point in the game either where it was like, okay, things are getting heated up. You need to win. No, this is like the 30th minute. They were in control. Just, I don't know. I'm not happy about that. He sometimes is a very important role in the team in that midfield and creating, especially right around that box area. But I don't know. They got sent off. It was a pretty open game, pretty physical, lots of fouls.
Yeah, very chippy.
Very chippy game for sure. It's good to see Pauk was still able to stay resilient, get the 2-0 win. I mean, like we mentioned earlier, Zolis had probably goal of the week. I mean, that kind of level of a goal, I'd say, no matter what league you're playing in, like that's not easy. A step over and then to curl it top corner from outside the box too. I mean, the kid, everyone knows, obviously the kid's the real deal, but just seeing him put in more performances like this, other than kind of sometimes the fluke goods first season or whatever that young,
And he also won the
Agreed.
penalty, by the way.
He did.
Yeah,
He did.
for Sivkovic.
Both goal contributions there.
Yeah.
Again, like, it's just one of those things, like, he really did bail them out today. It's really, I mean, disappointing that we can obviously see they can get that done where they're in a game like that. It's frustrating to see because you know that Asteras is a better team than Omonia, and they were able to break them down, but not in Europe, which has been the pattern over the past few years for PAOK. They're, you know, a completely different team in Greece. But yeah, I mean, from a PAOK perspective, it was a good win against, you know, a solid team, and it was a tough game. That was one of the things I noticed that I didn't really see in any of the other games, was that it was very physical. There was a lot of emotion. It was very chippy. So yeah.
Well, because they're not used to it either. PAOK are usually a pretty possessive team. They are good on the ball. They're very well rounded, I'd say, as a whole. Probably, like we talked about, one of the better attacking teams in the league. Their defense can be brought into question. You know, people kind of, they have options on the bench, which is good. People question, you know, the bringing in of Crespo, but I've watched soccer long enough where defenders age really well, especially central defenders, and having a guy with that experience and being kind of the anchor of that back line helps. And he did well today. Giannoulis, it's great to see him back on the field after being injured. Kind of weird that he was brought on in Europe, since he was having kind of an okay game, but today he definitely played really well. He saved their butt on a set piece on the corner, I think, off the first defender flick on, right at the back post. He's always got that style. It's good to see. I think Ethniki have really good depth at that position in general, which is nice.
Yeah, they have Mikhailevis as well, who can jump in there. So
yeah, so overall good match for them today. But yeah, the pattern is why they couldn't pull this off in Europe. Who knows?
Yeah.
But hopefully, you know, time this continues. Hopefully, this pattern continues with Garcia just continuing, you know, getting the guys motivated to pull through wins like this. But yeah, they're not used to having not possession. This game, I think it was kind of 50-50, but I think they were on the lesser half. I think it was like 55-45, somewhere around there. So, which is not a typical PAOK game. And they were able to pull off a win on top of it. So,
yeah, I mean,
go figure, man.
Definitely gave them a run for their money. So, I mean, I guess from a PAOK perspective, it's good to get a win out of that. But again, like, yeah, from a completely neutral standpoint, it's frustrating to see them do well in Greece, but then same situation kind of, and you can't get it out in Europe. So, yeah.
Something as well I was impressed by, I mean, Abel did it as well, but Pablo Garcia to even bigger level, is the playing of young players. So we saw Tsigaras come off the bench today. He's a big one. Yorgos Koutsias as well, 16 years of age, big talent. Obviously, we don't know whether he will develop just like, for example, Zolis, but they're definitely one to watch. I think PAOK's Academy has brought out some phenomenal players over the last 1-2 years, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they've lost some players and they haven't kind of skipped a beat or slowed down, thankfully. I mean, I know for Europe, Tsigaras was kind of people kept questioning Garcia. You know, he brought him in the last few games, like kind of iffy, but he stayed consistent with him. I personally think he had a great game in Europe this past week, being that kind of not full box to box, but he kind of played that role in that game, and he looked good. I was actually really surprised he was brought off, but
yeah, exactly. He had a decent performance against PSV as well.
Exactly.
I believe he had a few mistakes, but overall very solid game.
Yeah, he had a solid game too, and I get that why he was pulled off, but I guess the why should have happened earlier than if you're going to try to go for more offense and creativity.
Oh, yeah,
I don't know, but it was good to see he still came off the bench. So he's been putting in consistent performance. So
yeah, for sure, he's one.
PAOK is kind of, from a neutral standpoint too. It's good to see them just continuing. You know, the style of play they have is kind of entertaining. I gotta say.
Yeah,
they got young guys, but we'll see.
I like how also a lot of the young guys we see going to other clubs, really trying their luck at other clubs in Greece. So just a few examples. For example, are Baloyannis at Offi, Diamadis at Offi. several players like that, or Domcis at Pasiana, for example. They
Mhm.
really bring out a lot of players, but also they give them the chance. Like they let them go to other clubs when the time is right. So even as an AEK fan, I've been very impressed by that.
Yeah. So it looks like we're almost out of time here. So figure we'll probably try to wrap it up. Sharing our Twitter accounts, I guess. If anybody wants to try and find us. I don't know if you guys can see on our screen, we have it next to our names. You'll always be able to find them in the bio for the Big Three Podcast Twitter page. And yeah, so big week coming up, at least for Olympiacos, and hopefully Greece gets a team in Europe for January. We have the World Cup qualifying draw tomorrow, so next week when we record, we'll know the outcome of that, and we'll talk about that a little more. But yeah, any last thoughts you guys want to leave us with?
No, I think like we said, first episode, kind of cover what we can. Definitely want to dedicate with the draw tomorrow, and then we'll kind of see who our opponents are, kind of talk more Ethniki based. We'll still cover the league, of course, and whatnot. Europe, but I think we can put a focus there, give everyone our thoughts on that. Yeah, other than that, always open to suggestion as well too. So drop us a message or a comment. I know we've got a few people already including us in their opinions and thoughts on certain games. I know Chuck's a big supporter. Kosta, any last minute thoughts yourself?
No, just been thank you guys for listening, and we can't wait to see you guys next week again, hopefully, for another discussion.
Yeah, cool. For sure. And on the level of suggestions, I'll probably try to we'll work on getting a post out for that so that we can try to include some more people in and maybe further on the road some guest hosts. But yeah, good time filming this. Looking forward to more, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
All right, guys. We'll talk soon, gentlemen. Thanks.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.